Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in to 613 Sports and Capital City Supporters Group. Today, we are joined with Oliver Platt, one soccer expert. How are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Quarantine, so only way we can do this. But here at 613 Sports, we like to start off all our interviews just with some rapid fire questions just to warm everyone up. So, first question is your favorite genre of music?
Genre of music. I'm actually a bit of a hip hop fan.
Oh,
I kind of, yeah, I kind of grew up with that. Just me and my friends kind of twigged onto it, and no one else really liked it in the town I grew up in England. So it kind of became our little thing. So yeah, I've always been, a big hip hop fan.
do you have a favorite artist?
I would say probably favorite ever is probably has to be Kanye. I like Kendrick Lamar a lot. When I was younger, I used to like Lupe Fiasco a lot. He was kind of the first one that really got me into it. So yeah, they're probably my favorites.
And what is your game day routine?
Game day routine for a soccer game?
Yeah.
Um, well, normally we'll get to the studio pretty early for a game if we're broadcasting, obviously. Do some preparation in the morning, have a production meeting usually with the producer and everyone who's on the show and people like that. And then, yeah, it's just about kind of preparing. You have to get hair and makeup done, which has been very new for me. And then, yeah, going through rehearsals and just recording the show. So, yeah, not much to it, really, just about preparation, really.
Sounds pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite team growing up?
My favorite team is my hometown team in England called MK Dons. I'm sure not many of your viewers will know who they are. They're in the third division. But yeah, they're my local hometown team. So I try and get to a game whenever I'm at home in England.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen a couple of them in FA Cup. Pretty good team.
Nice.
And your favorite athlete of all time?
Favorite athlete? That's a good one. I've always liked just kind of like creative midfield players. So Iniesta would probably be up there. Modric, I like a lot. Don't know if I have an absolute favorite. Messi, I think, is the greatest of all time. And just like if you've seen him actually in the stadium and in the flesh, it's like he's different to anyone you'll ever see, in my opinion. So he'd probably be up there. Yeah, I don't know if I could pick an absolute favorite, but those kinds of players are the ones I like.
Yeah, those are really creative players. All right, so moving on to the CPL, they announced the other day that they're planning to start on Victoria Day weekend. If no fans are still allowed by that time, is the season still going to go on, or are we going to see another island games?
I think that won't stop them from having a normal season necessarily. It may delay the season. It may be that they just want to kind of get limited capacity to begin with and then build it up. But I still think having another bubble set up would be the absolute last resort. So I don't think that's particularly likely to happen again. Hopefully, now that the vaccine's out and the weather gets a bit warmer, the situation's kind of stable enough for us to start, as I said, at least with like limited capacity. And if you have places like Ottawa and Hamilton and Winnipeg where they're playing in those CFL stadiums, so if you can get 20%, it's a decent crowd, right? And you can get your season ticket holders in and kind of go from there. So I think everyone's feeling pretty optimistic that, that could at least be a starting point. And then hopefully as the year goes on, we could get back to business as usual. But we'll see. It's still pretty difficult to say just because, no one really knows what April and May are going to look like, right? So it's tough to predict.
Alongside that announcement, they also announced a 50% increase in the U21 minutes. What are your thoughts on this?
Mm-hmm. It's good, I think. Yeah, it's going to be at a level where it'll be 1,500 minutes now. So everyone in 2019 in the full season hit 1,500 minutes. So I don't think it's going to be a huge change in terms of how teams are building the rosters and so on. It just kind of keeps that standard where it was in the first year. Some teams went way beyond that. Pacific had like 13,000 minutes or something like that. So they blew through it. But obviously, it's a big part of what the league is about, right? Is developing young players, giving Canadians opportunities. You want to make sure that there's always a stream of, kind of teenaged or early 20 players coming into the league and getting those opportunities, and that doesn't stop. So, I'm a fan of it. I like anything that kind of promotes the young Canadians. So I think the league is going to be built on, and the success of the league down the line is going to be built on developing those players and sending them to bigger and better things.
Yeah, and a lot of these players come from the youth sports draft. And obviously with COVID, a lot of the youth sports teams couldn't play. So how has that impacted the team's scouting?
Yeah, it's tough, right? You don't really have anything to scout. So I think it's with the esports draft, it's always about a lot of teams go to the schools that are local to them and they're familiar with the programs and the coaches and so on. So they have that kind of insight. And then you get some players who maybe aren't as familiar, but you hear good things or you see good things, and then those players get invites into camp. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it kind of pans out this year. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about the pool of players that's there, just because again, there's not been much to base it on. But I think, as I said, you'll see teams go to kind of the schools that are local to them, bring those players into their preseason training camps and see if they can stick. And a lot of them in the first couple of years have, right? And we've had guys like Joel Waterman, who's been, one of the better young players that the league has produced. So it's interesting. The players don't really come into the league with much profile, but they can quite often turn out to be pretty impactful players.
Yeah, and the other day on Twitter, there was, again, the normal debate of how should the league determine who wins the cup, right? If it's playoffs or it's a single stage. What's your opinion on this? What is the best way to determine a winner?
I personally think you have to have some kind of playoff system, just because I don't think the single table really works when you don't have other things to play for other than the title. Like if we had relegation, then that keeps kind of the interest level at the bottom end of the table. If you have continental qualification, for example, like you have in the Premier League, then that keeps interest for mid-table teams maybe. We don't have anything like that, right? We just have the champion. So I think you've got to find ways to be more creative and to have teams who maybe don't have a great start or who are lower down the table for whatever reason to still have something to play for. So I like a playoff system. I wouldn't go too far and have everyone in the playoffs. I'd probably go for 3 or 4 teams. But I kind of like the idea of making sure you have meaning to the regular season by sending the regular season winner straight to the final and having that be one leg and then them host it at home. And then having, whether it's a 2v3 match or whether it's bringing in a 4th place team as well and having some kind of way into the final for those 2 or 3 teams. That's the way I would do it. I think the way they were going to do it in 2020, if it was a normal season, was about right. So I expect they'll go with something like that again.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. It's everything else, because if a team is at the bottom, they don't really have much to play for. Then it comes to the question of, will fans show up? And obviously, in a growing league, you need fans to continue to show up. So now moving on to Atletico Ottawa, at the Island Games, you saw a lot of the behind the scenes. How was the team spirit, especially since they just joined together pretty quickly compared to other teams?
It was really good. That was actually one of the impressive things about Atletico Ottawa was you have all of these players coming together. Some knew each other from other clubs, but obviously they're pretty new to each other. You have a head coach as well who's still learning English. And so you kind of wonder how it's all going to gel together and how they're going to get that team spirit. But it was really good. So honestly, they were one of the teams that seems most positive, most together. You saw when Vitti Martinez scored that last minute goal and they're all, piling on each other on the sidelines, like you kind of got an impression of it there, right? So I was really impressed with what they did. To be honest, I thought they would finish last, and I was wondering if they were going to win a game just because of the circumstances of building a brand new team. And they completely proved me wrong. They were on their day when they had their best 11 out there, they were as good as pretty much anyone. They could give anyone a game. And now it's just about kind of building on that, building more depth in the squad, which was their big problem. And moving forward from here. But I thought Mister did a really good job to bring the team together, to give them kind of a simple system that everyone understood and allowed them to hit the ground running. And yeah, they took a lot of people by surprise, I think.
Yeah, and touching on that system, Mister brought a new Spanish kind of tactical possession and forward first. Is this the right play style for Atletico Ottawa, and can we win the league with this play style?
I think it was the right play style for them last year. I think what he had to do was keep it really basic and simple and make sure everyone understood what was expected of them. And so just setting up in the way he did with, 2 midfielders who protect the defense, basically the whole team was built around getting the best out of Acuna, right? And that was a pretty safe way to go given the quality he had. So Malcolm Shaw just being kind of that unselfish target man, getting through a lot of the hard work, creating space for Acuna. You had Fisk on the left kind of coming inside and then Neuville going down the wing, and that partnership worked really well. So there was just a lot of simple stuff like that, which, isn't anything kind of groundbreaking, but it made sense for the players they had. It made the players again, it was easy for the players to understand and kind of hit the ground running from day one. And I thought he did a really good job with it. So I think he'll always want to play with the ball. And, he's from Spain. He's had that kind of upbringing with Atletico Madrid. So that's not going to change. Whether it's exactly the same without Acuna, I don't know. But I think it will always be along those lines.
Yeah, and speaking of Aquino, obviously he left the team, and that's a pretty big hole to fill. Do you see Atletico Ottawa as using a player they already have, or do you see them signing a new player to fill that creative role?
I think they've got to sign probably a few new players. I think they had a core of 10 to 12 maybe that I would expect they'll probably bring back and will be important to them again. But like I said, the depth wasn't there. He didn't really have a lot to go to on the bench. I don't think a lot of those players had come in quite late, so maybe we just weren't familiar with the team as much as they could have been. So I think that's the area where they need to strengthen. And obviously, when you lose a player like Acuna, you've got to go out and find some quality to replace him because he was just so important to them. I think he was probably the player who was most important to his team in the entire league. So that's good. They're going to be big shoes to fill. But I think obviously you get a little bit anxious when a player of that quality leaves. But the CPL has a lot of interesting opportunities in terms of where it's finding players, from other CONCACAF nations, from Europe, from, some of the young Canadians coming through. There's a lot of avenues for these clubs to go down, I think, if they use all the kind of tools that are at their disposal. So it's difficult. It's a difficult player to replace for sure, but there's a lot of opportunities out there for CPL clubs to bring in some pretty interesting talent. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and Vitti Martinez was another key player in that midfield, and obviously he's on loan right now. Is he returning to the team? Is that something fans should expect, or is there a chance that he could also not come back?
Yeah. As far as I know, I think he's expected to return. Obviously, he's out on loan right now. I think he's a really good player and one of the more underrated players in the league. So whether he does well in Spain and gets some interest there from a Spanish club, you don't know, you can't predict. But I think they're expecting to have him back as of right now. And yeah, he's going to be a really key piece. I thought he did really well in PEI and is one of the better holding midfield players in the league. So yeah, he'll be important. Ben McKendry, I thought, was really good alongside him as well. So that's a good partnership. But as far as I know, he's coming back, but you never know what could happen, especially this year, right, with all that's going on.
Yeah, and Ottawa seemed to have, while they did score some goals, a lot of games they didn't. Do you feel that they have the proper players right now to produce goals and we just need a longer season to develop, or do we need to bring in a couple extra signings to help assist with that?
I think they'll need new signings for sure. But they have a good starting point. Shaw was another one who kind of surprised people, I thought, with how well he played. Fisk is obviously a good player at this level. He's proven it time and time again. Kuruma was a nice pickup. I was surprised no one else took him, to be honest. So you have the starting point, but you don't really, I don't think the team had enough depth. And over a 28-game season, that's going to be more important, that you can't just put, obviously Acuna's gone now, but it was Fisk, Acuna, Kuruma, and Shaw every single game, right? That was the four. And so you need more depth and rotation options than that. So they will definitely look to add, I think. But yeah, as I said, I think there's some interesting opportunities for them in recruitment, especially with the Atletico Madrid link to potentially get some high quality players. So I think they'll be aggressive and ambitious and bring in some talent.
Yeah, and Ottawa's star boy talent, Antoine Copeland, what were your first impressions of him?
Really talented. You could just see it in warm-ups as much as anything, that like in terms of his technical skills, he's really got a ton of ability, right? So he's still really raw. I think like the physical side of the game for someone his age is difficult right now. He's going to develop as, physically and on that side of things. He's going to learn how to play in a system and at the professional level and all of that stuff. But that takes time and that will come with time. What he has is just really, really strong raw skills. His ability on the ball, his touch, his passing range, all of that stuff is really high quality. And you can see why people in Ottawa for a few years now, with the Fury and with the youth clubs there have been excited about him. So yeah, he's one I'm looking forward to watching develop over the next few years. And
finally, the last question, where do you see, I know it's a very early prediction, but where do you see Atletico Ottawa finishing?
It's really tough to say right now, to be honest. I think there's, I think Forge will always be strong. even though they might lose a few important players. Cavalry you expect will be up there. And then everyone else, it's tough to predict. I don't think there's much between them. There could be teams that are right up there, or they could be in last place, just because the level of the league is I think pretty equal right now. So I'd probably have them right now, looking at the players they have, looking at what I kind of expect them to do in the transfer market. I'd probably have them around the middle of the pack. But they certainly have the potential, with the right moves, to move up the table. And you'd also have to say they have the potential, just because there's a lot of good teams in the league, to be further down if they don't get it right in the transfer market as well. But yeah, it's tough to say right now, to be honest. Probably too early to tell. But as I said, I think they're a club that's going to be ambitious and aggressive and really try and strengthen the squad. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And well, I mean, here in Ottawa, our goal is, as long as we finish ahead of Edmonton, we'll be happy. So, but this was the interview. Thank you, Oliver, for joining me. Got good insight. Finally, just some analytical news to talk about in a pretty tough time. So sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. No problem.
Whoa, forget to do an outro. So here we are. But thank you, Oliver Platt, for joining me on this interview. Really appreciate taking your time out. I mean, we learned a couple things here. I think the most important thing is that CPL, we're going to have a season, either with fans or without fans, hopefully with fans. But at the end of the day, we'll take any soccer. And in terms of Atletico Ottawa, I think the biggest news is that most of the players will be returning, but we do need some new signings to fill in some gaps up top and in the middle. So it's an exciting season. Finally, we have something to talk about. So be sure, if you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe button on 613 Sports, and make sure to check out Capital City Supporters Group, because Capital City is your one-stop shop. I can't talk anymore. It's your one place for Atletico Ottawa news. Hit the like button. Peace out.
Yeah, I'm leaving.